Hey everybody, this is Zoltan, and we are on episode 8 of our Road to Glory with Milan Juniors. And if you remember back 7 episodes ago, we started out as a one-star team in the second division in Italy with Serie B. And the concept was based on AC Milan and having a player coach, Paolo Maldini. And he was able to put together a youth team, including his son, but everyone was basically like a 65 overall or less, and it was a pretty bad team. It was a one-star team, but we went through several episodes now of trying to build up that team to be competitive, and we finally have gotten to the point where we are actually on the verge, I believe, of trying to get promoted out of Serie B into Serie A at the end of this season. Right now we are in the middle of Season 2, and we're doing much better than we were before, but I'm looking at a player that I'm trying to add. He's a really good youth player that I think he was originally with PSV, but for some reason he's now with Roma. And he's a really good player, has a real face, so that's a real big plus, and he's only 18 years old, and I believe there's a lot of growth here. What's really good is if you get a player show up in your scouting, they will be at a discount, so you'll be able to get a pretty good bargain. And let's take a look at this guy. I'm not even totally sure how to pronounce his name. I think it's Ihatarian. So let's take a look at what we can offer him. So unfortunately, the transfer fee that they're initially asking for here is 17 million, which is slightly above what I currently have. And annual salary, that's not a big deal. I think, in fact, I could probably raise that a little bit. But you can see his release fee is 36 million. So there's a lot of room here to grow. And this will be a really huge boon to our team. He'll instantly become one of my best young up-and-coming stars. So I have to wait. In fact, I've been waiting a few days. I've been trying to sell some players over the last 2 weeks of the season. Not really the season, but the first half leading up to the mid-season transfer window. I wanted to sell a couple of players so that I would be in a position to go ahead and take care of these negotiations before the transfer window opens. That's kind of what I wanted to do. But I wasn't able to sell anybody, and I do have a few players that I sold, but not for very high transfer fees. So they're on the way out the door, and right now I was only able to get my transfer budget up to 14 million. So you might think, okay, well, let's go into the transfer window and try to sell a few more players. Here's the problem. I'm aware of the fact that at the end of this month, which is tomorrow on here, he will increase, and this player's value will go up substantially because he'll go from 75 overall to 77 overall, and it'll be too hard for me to get him. So I need to start the negotiations now, and by the time I finish the negotiations, he'll already be 2 points higher than he currently is. So I have a few other players here. This guy's old, so I don't think anybody's going to want him. And I do have some other guys. I was actually kind of looking at this guy as a possible winger, but he's too expensive, so I'm just going to wait on him. I've got a few other guys here that I'm looking at as guys that I can sell or who have already agreed to a contract and will be released onto their new team tomorrow. But several of them have not yet received offers. So if they do, I'll be in a good position. But I have to get something started now, otherwise I'll lose this guy. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. It's kind of a tricky moment here. We've got this last day or so that we can do something. But now there is one other choice, and this is something I thought would be a possibility, would be to add a player into this as a traded player, and that will lower the transfer fee down to a more reasonable, not just reasonable, but doable, because I currently cannot do this deal with the terrible transfer budget that I currently have. Well, I wouldn't say it's terrible. It's just it's substantially more than I had before, but it's not enough to even just get this one guy that I want. So I'm looking at this guy who is still 20 years old, 66 overall. Hasn't really been growing that much because he's not getting enough playing time. And if I wanted to, I could add him to the deal, and that brings the transfer fee down a little bit. And so maybe I can just bring it down one click, and that brings me under the transfer fee of 14 million. So that's actually doable. And then if I give him a 3-year deal, I can even increase this a couple of clicks up. And let's see if he takes that. So that would be great for me because I could get rid of a player that doesn't get much playing time on my team, and it would put me under the transfer budget. And so that would be a possibility. Let's go ahead and advance. And I'm refusing to join another team. In fact, I think it was Cagliari, and they just recently got demoted down to Serie B, but they're currently number 1, and they're definitely going to get promoted, so I just decided to pass on that offer. So now they're at the mid-season cutscene where they're going to tell me that I'm doing fine because my original goal was 6th place overall. And we're currently, I think, in 3rd place, so we're doing okay. We're in line to get transferred. Promoted. As you can see over here on the right side, we are tied with Genoa, but they beat us head-to-head, so they're a pretty good team. But still, we're in 3rd place. So let's see what popped up here. I think basically I got some messages about players departing. Tell me to look at some contracts. And there's nothing here from the player that I just currently made an offer, so let's go forward and advance time. So now if this doesn't work, we have other options. We can always go back and reload and try something different. Oh, so looks like the negotiations have broken down, and the message that I'm getting from them is here, and they said that they are comparing to Roma. That threw a wrench in it. Obviously he doesn't want to leave that team, even though he's probably not getting much playing time over there, so that ruined everything. So what we'll do now is we'll back out of this and restart and take a different strategy. So I believe this is a really critical signing for my team, so I'm willing to try this a few more times. But this time I'll try a different strategy. Rather than adding a player for trade, I'll simply propose a lower transfer fee, going a couple of clicks below down to 13. Now I wish I could actually just like set it at 14.6 or something instead of it jumps from 15.4 down to 13.7. I don't know why it's like that, but it should be easier to set a specific amount. So rather than offering a player to be traded, I'm offering substantially less than what I offered before, which is interesting. So I didn't even include any player to be traded, and I'm pushing the transfer fee even below what I just offered just a moment ago. Now I'll put the annual salary back where I had it just a minute ago for 3 years. It says that he would welcome a move to our club, and it says that there's a high chance of success. But for some reason, adding that player in there for trade caused him to say that he didn't want to leave Roma. So let's advance and see what happens. All right, so it's the opening day of the transfer window. We are in the middle of Season 2. Just a reminder, this was a team that was led by Paolo Maldini, who was 50 years old as a player coach. And he was someone who got basically retired right from the very beginning. So at the end of Season 1, he left the team. And I was left with his son and a bunch of youth prospects to try to rebuild this team. So let's check once again. I think probably I didn't get any messages, just departures, so nothing regarding the transfer of that player that we're trying to get. But I do have one piece of news here where I do have a player that just returned from loan. Is Russo, and he is now, his market value is pretty close to his release fee, so I'm probably not going to be using him very much, and I think it would be a good idea to transfer him. I can put him on the list as well. I do have a couple of other players, like this one is a backup left back. I think he's my third string left back, and he's getting pretty close. His market value is pretty close to his release fee, so I put him on the list, and teams are looking at him, but for some reason they haven't offered. Another one is here, and he is also on the list. He's my backup right winger, and he has exceeded his release fee, so I either have to re-sign him to a new contract, which I think will be hard because he's not getting enough playing time, or sell him, which is what we're trying to do now. So he's on the list here at 3.6. The other interesting thing is you can see down here there's a notice that the youth team has now brought in some new players. So for example, we see all the players with a little blue dot next to it. For example, I can see down here Junior Hoylett, surprisingly retired last season and is now a 16-year-old Canadian player that is now on my youth team. So there's several players here which I can actually take a better look at. If I go to my youth team training, it will show me their real face. Like this guy here, I believe he's Moussa Dembele, one of many Moussa Dembeles that exist in the league, and now he's 16 years old and he has a real face. So there's a few other guys. Here's a backup goalkeeper who has a real face as well. Some people don't like, these 16-year-old players with a real face coming in because they're regions. But I think it's kind of cool. This guy has a real face. And so I do have, Hoylett does not. But there should be a few players on here that might have real faces. Now the other thing that we can do is go into a search, because if you compared to yesterday, there wasn't a lot of good players in here, but I'm going to do a search of young players from 15 to 17 years old who happen to be a free agent. And let's see if anybody pops up here. Well, there's Paolo Maldini. So I had to wait basically half a year to get him back out here as a free agent. He's 16 years old. He starts out as a 72 overall right back. The good thing is, if I wanted to offer him a contract, he's asking for $484,000, which I think is fine, and I probably could even ask for a little bit less. His release fee is $25 million, so he has lots of room to grow. I can give him a 3-year contract, and says he would welcome a significant role on the team, so he'd welcome a move to the club. So we can offer him, try to bring him back in. There's another guy here as a center back, which I have a lot of, so I may not need him, but I do need another backup winger, so this guy can play right wing. And he retired, obviously, so I can do a similar thing, make him an offer of $372,000. He has a release fee of $19 million, so this is going to add some value to my team if he decides to join. See if anybody else kind of pops up here. I'm basically looking for guys who have a real face. Some of these guys are regions, but they don't have real faces, and I would prefer to get somebody that does. So I got a couple. Oh, this guy looks like he might have a real face. No, maybe that's not. So every 6 months or so, you just got to come back here and check to see who is repopulating and see if there's anybody worth bringing in. The Ass Man, guys on Seinfeld. So I could probably go for somebody like this. Silva. He's not a real face, but he would add something to the team, and he has a 24 million release fee. Let's see if I offered him like a little bit less, if he'll take that maybe. So we still have the guys on our youth team that we can always bring in at any time. At some point, I think I'll bring in Dembele. He'll be a pretty good backup center mid for me. And I also have a good backup goalkeeper here that I think would be good, that I definitely need on my team, because I recently sold one of my goalkeepers. So let's move forward and see what happens with that original offer. If you remember last time, they rejected it because he did not want to move from Roma. And so this time I offered him less of a deal, a lower contract transfer fee, and no player to be traded. And let's see what happens. Alright, so now I got a cutscene. So this means he's not rejecting me, he is negotiating, and that's kind of odd if you think about it, because, and I've tried this a couple of times, and the same thing happens every time. If I put a low-level player in there as part of the trade, even though it's a sweeter deal for them, they just reject it completely. This time it looks like they are asking for more than I have. So I want to take a look, because this is a little bit of an issue, considering the fact that my transfer budget is 14.7 million. I can't take this deal even if I wanted to, because they have negotiated that down to 3 million increase, which is above my current budget. I don't mind paying the extra salary, and the win bonus isn't such a big deal, because with these higher level players, really, even if I won 30 games with him, it would just increase his salary by 60,000. So that's really, in a $1.2 million a year salary, that doesn't really make much of a difference. The annual salary going up to $794 is doable. I think that that's okay. But the issue right now I'm having is the transfer fee. I have to get this down to 14.7 million. Otherwise, I can't do the deal. So I have to renegotiate. If you go back and try it, I mean, look what happens. Can't do it because of the budget. But notice his overall, by the way, is now at 77. If we looked when we first started here, it was 75. So his market value has already gone up just in one day. So now his market value is at 26 million. His release fee is 36 million if you look at the new contract. And I'm only paying, or they're only asking for 16 million for the transfer fee. So this is the benefit of getting somebody through scouting, because he's instantly a $10 million profit just from day one, and he can grow to 36 million. So that could be another 10 million. So I could profit 20 million off of this player just in his first contract. And I don't think it would take very long for him to increase his value I think this guy could probably increase up into the high 80s or even low 90s. So what we'll do is renegotiate. Even though I don't have the money, I'm going to have to ask for... Now I could go all the way down to 13.4, but that would be silly because that's actually below where we started. But I could go to 15 and accept everything else, and I don't have the money for that. But by the time they come back with their response, I could even try to knock this win bonus down a click and down to 1,800 instead of 2,000. And it'll take 3 or 4 days for them to respond. By that time, I probably will get another offer. So I'll have more money, and I will be able to accept that deal once that occurs. So let's go ahead and just take a look at our game plan. So I'm just going to bring in load my top players. And you can see my goalkeeper is not in form, but I don't think I have another goalkeeper on the roster, so I'm going to have to use a player like that, unfortunately. And I probably can bring in this left back to play over here, but the rest of the team just going to have to deal with it as it is. Even though my goalkeeper is not in form, I'll probably lose this game if I decided to sim it. Now, of course, I could play the game, but I don't know what kind of response I'm going to get on all those contracts. So I did lose. I think it had to do with the fact that my goalkeeper was not in form, and that's why you need a backup goalkeeper, which I probably should have thought about bringing in that guy from the youth division, but it takes a day for him to get on the team anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But at least I maintain my position here as third place. Let's see what happened here with Maldini. He did accept the deal. Honda has not, so I'll have to renegotiate with him. And Silva, who I did actually ask for a little less than what he was asking for, decided to come in. So I just have to accept those deals. And so Maldini will come in. And that's a pretty good boost for me because his market value is 26 million. Even though his release fee is currently right about the same as what his market value is, I'm not really planning on selling him in the future anyway. So I'll just go ahead and accept this deal. And that is... not going to affect my transfer budget, but it did lower my salary budget by 484,000. So I can do the same with this guy. And his market value is a little bit lower than his release fee, so he does have a little bit of room to grow. And that's what I would normally expect. So I'll go ahead and accept this. That knocks my salary budget another 335,000. And this guy, Honda, wants a win bonus, which I could probably negotiate this a little bit, but I really need a winger to replace the one I'm currently trying to sell. So I'll just go ahead and accept that. And so that brings my salary budget down to just under 3 million, which should be enough. Yes, it should be enough if they accept this deal. So what I really need to do is I need to sell somebody in order to put myself a little bit over the line that I need to be at in order to make this go through. All right, so here's my new center back that I just brought in. Newcomers. And Maldini is sitting down there. The new Maldini. This is the legend that was in the game, but he was 50 years old in Season 1, and so he retired, but now he comes back. We can just consider him his younger son. And let's see what happened. All right, well, they have negotiated. I think this is probably the last. See, now that I knocked that win bonus down, they increased the salary, which really, if you think about it, would have been better just to keep the win bonus at 2,000, because even if I win 30 games, that's only 60,000. So I'm increasing the salary for the sake of having a $200 win bonus. It just didn't make sense. So it would have been better for me to just accept that the way it was. Now they're asking for a transfer fee of $15.6 million, which I still don't have. I need to sell somebody for $1 million. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to clear that, and I don't know how long that's going to stay there, how patient that they will be in order for me to be able to accept the deal. So I have a few days here that I can just go one day at a time until I get some kind of offer for somebody. No, nothing. That's kind of ridiculous. Again, nothing. So it's a bit surprising that I still haven't received any offers. We're 9 days into the transfer window and I still haven't sold anybody. And it says Hernandez to be transferred, which is somebody I'm definitely not going to be selling. He's my starting center forward. I don't know, especially when you look at like 3 or 4 other teams are looking at those 2 guys that I have on my list. Why would they not make an offer? Still nothing. This is absurd. Let's even look if they're still... Yeah, well, I don't know why 4 teams are looking at him, all of them from Japan, when he's not on the list. It just doesn't make sense. Here's another one that's not on the list, and you have a bunch of teams. It just doesn't make sense why they're looking at him. And another one. Not on the list either. Here's the older player that is on the list. Nobody wants him. This guy is not on the list, but somebody's looking at him. And the guys that used to have teams in contact, nobody there anymore. He had 4 teams looking at him. That just doesn't make sense. All right, well, I got 2 teams looking at him, but no offer yet. I need to sell him because that would give me easily the money I need to finally accept this deal. Here's another one that does have 2, and that would also give me plenty of money. And this guy had 4 teams looking at him too, and just nothing happened. It's so ridiculous. And his value went up. He's now a 69. Huh. It says he opted not to renew his contract because he wishes to join another club. Well, I don't know why nobody's making an offer. That's kind of weird. So I'm kind of stuck. Now the good thing is you can always redo this several times and try to see if you can get a better deal. Let's back out of this and see what happens, because sometimes it just doesn't make sense. The guys that are on my list that teams were looking at didn't get any offers, and I kind of need to do that in order to get the deal to go through. So let's look at another. Let me see, which one is this? All right, now the interesting thing here, this was another attempt that I made earlier on. If you remember Maldini last time, I don't know if you remember, but he was a 72 overall. But the first time I did it, I got him as a 74. So this was actually, and then I did it a couple more times, and he came up 72 each time. But I thought this would be unique because it's much better to start out at 74. You can see his market value is now 33 million instead of, I think it was something like 26 million before. So I instantly benefited quite a bit by having a much better player who can probably start right away. So I did accept this deal. He wasn't asking for any bonuses. And I also accepted this deal for a left back who will be a good backup. And I also needed, as you remember, a second goalkeeper. And I accepted this deal as well. All three of these guys were 16-year-old players from free agency. You can see each one is 16 years old. They just were released as free agents on the first day of the transfer window. But here's the good news is eFootball is only asking for 14.2 million, which is fine because I don't even need to sell anybody. I already have that amount. And his proposed annual salary is a little bit higher. I think it's slightly higher than the previous one. But the good news is I have enough money to go ahead and accept this just as it is. I'll take the win bonus rather than trying to negotiate. I can accept the terms of this deal right now. That does bring my transfer bonus down to 482,000, and it brings my salary budget to 2.2 million, which is still plenty of money for me to play with on my salary side. Now I do have my budget settings for everything to go directly into salary because I am expecting to sell several players here that I have set up, but who knows if that's actually going to happen or not. But at least we have players that are on. Look, you got four people are looking at him. One team is looking at this guy. He's on the list, and I could sell him, which would be great because he's my 34-year-old player that I didn't think anybody would want to buy him. This guy has one team looking at him. This guy's on the list. That's my right winger who has two teams looking at him. And I think at this point, I mean, this didn't make any sense at all. He has 4 teams looking at him. Why didn't they make an offer? It just didn't make sense to me in the last one. So what you need to do, I think, is you pretty much have to kind of save it. Save this and redo it a couple of times until you get teams to actually make offers. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense that you go through two or 3 weeks of the transfer window and not get any offers on anybody. But here's the good thing is we do finally have our key player at this point. That was the main thing. I just wanted to be able to bring in somebody who I felt was going to grow a lot on the team. If we look at our game plan now, they haven't all yet joined, so this is my starting lineup. You can see everybody's in the, especially my offensive players are all in the mid to high 70s, and I've got mid to low 70s for my other defensive players. So this will really make a difference if I add that. In fact, I have, I think, oh yeah, this guy's actually better, so it's pretty solid. It's a pretty good team at this point. And I will be adding Maldini to my right back, and I'll be adding that new Mkhitaryan as an attacking midfielder, and he's now 77, so that's an upgrade. And so you can see this is going to be a team that will be able to compete at the highest level of Serie B, and then we'll see how we improve at the beginning of Season 3 will be our next goal and try to get promoted. So we'll advance here one day. I'll probably see a cutscene, and then be on the lookout for future episodes of this Milan Juniors Road to Glory. And hopefully we'll be a competitive team going forward into Season 3. So we should see a cutscene here of our player coming out and joining the team. There he is. Oh, that's the Maldini.